SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Hump Day.
And a wet one it is out there. Good grief. Bring on the ark. I don't think
it's going to be soggy for pretty much the southern 2/3 of the state today.
Jeez. Relentless. What did the bishop say in Caddyshack? I don't think the heavy stuff's coming for a while. Oh, my gosh. We're here, though, ready to get going. We've got Scott Sands, national radio host, joining MidDays at 11:05. He'll provide his breakdown of all the stuff going on the national scene. We got tariffs, immigration, Ukraine, paper straws, pennies, and the like, FEMA, bunch of stuff. And then, wow, how timely is this one, Rhino? Senator Jeremy England, he joins MidDays at 12:05. He, of course, represents District 51, chair of the Elections Committee. He's got a bill that has sparked much controversy here in the state of Mississippi. One that our governor, Tate Reeves, does not support. Made that quite clear. This bill would extend early voting 15 days prior to Election Day. One could cast their ballot without an excuse. You know how it works now. You can early vote, absentee vote, but you got to have an excuse. Wink, wink. So he's going to come on and talk about it. We look forward to that conversation as he will break down all the details for us. As far as your money goes, the Dow is down 334 at this moment. The NASDAQ down as well. But something we need to be paying attention to is the 10-year Treasury yield. It is up considerably today, knocking on the door once again, Rhino, of that 5% mark, that high water mark, if you will. What does this mean? It means mortgages are going to remain high, probably go up a bit from here. Means credit card rates are going to stay high. It means any sort of loans for automobiles and the like, any sort of consumer spending, going to stay up there. It's up 13 basis points right now is the 10-year yield. And this is because the old Consumer Price Index was released this morning. It came in hot. I told you. I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. It came in hot. It accelerated to a seasonally adjusted 0.5% for the month. That puts the annual inflation rate now at 3%. Both of those figures higher than expected. The core CPI came in at 0.4% for the month and 3.3% for the year, also above expectations of economists. Yesterday, Jay Powell said, I don't see any rate cuts in our future. He, of course, the the chairman of the Federal Reserve. The problem is shelter costs continue to be a problem, accelerating inflation up 0.4% for the month. Food prices also up 0.4%. Energy prices, no surprise, because we've been watching the cost of oil per barrel up 1.1%. Gasoline prices up 1.8%. In other words, we ain't out of the woods yet. And though I fully support the president's reversal of many of these Biden administration era anti-fossil fuels policies, I think it's great. You heard him on the campaign trail 1,000,000 times say, drill, baby, drill. And again, I don't want to say I told you so here, but it is something that we said on the program many times, which is I wouldn't be so sure the energy companies are going to be swift to really investing a lot in drilling and exploration and producing more oil. In fact, they've come out and said that. They have come out and said that we're probably not, they've told the president this, we're probably not going to go out and drill more. He's encouraged the shale industry in particular. That's where we have an enormous amount of opportunity to expand the supply. He said no matter how many regulations you roll back, we're not going to do it because that drives the price down. And these crazy consumers out there buying all we can produce at a higher price point. Thus, we're making more money. So I'm concerned that at this point, I don't see the price of gas coming down. I just don't. Because I don't see the supply of oil increasing. And the industry has come out and said that. Now, there is also a concern about trade policy and how that might infect things. And the OPEC nations, they've stuck to their demand forecast. They've reaffirmed their plans to gradually hike output from April, but they said that they're not so sure about that now. So we'll see where all that goes. But that's the big money news. On another note, concerning your money, we're going to have to crank up, Rhino, the old Earth, Wind, and Fire Celebrate. It's a pretty good tune. This news I'm about to share is cause for a minor celebration. It's just another notch in the stock, if you will, of abolishing DEI in this nation. Now it's Goldman Sachs. They have canceled their DEI requirement for IPO companies. Remember, we railed on this. Oh, yeah, you got to have a certain number of board members that check the boxes here, and you've got to have all these DEI initiatives in place, or we ain't going to help you go public. Even though you might create lots of value for society and make our shareholders and our investors a bunch of money, that's secondary. What's primary is how many of this person you got and how many of that person you got and what your board composition looks like. Wait, you don't have any purple hair. I don't want to get too crazy here. You can dream all that up. You don't have enough of them on your board, right? Oh, gosh. So this is good news. We're seeing more and more. Disney even, they've said, we're in the entertainment business. We're going to go back to entertaining. Wow, how about that? We're going to abolish this DEI nonsense. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
No, that's just celebrate.
Oh, pardon me.
I'm just playing it under you.
Because I didn't see the progress bar. I hear it now. This is cause for celebration, isn't it? We're seeing company after company abandon this DEI nonsense. When Disney comes out, Bob Iger, the CEO, and says, we're an entertainment company. What tipped you off there, dude? Can you believe that? This is wonderful news. I'm telling you, the tide has turned, and it's largely driven by this president who came right out of the chute with a series of executive orders that said, be gone with all that crap. in government. We're not doing that anymore. We're not hiring people on the basis of the melanin content of their skin and other immutable characteristics or how they identify sexually and all that sort of stuff. We're not doing that. We're going back to the old days, the great days of hiring people, promoting, appointing, compensating, awarding contracts to third-party vendors on the basis of quality and qualifications and merit and performance and capabilities. Wow. Amazing how things just have always kind of returned to the old equilibrium, and that's what we're witnessing right now. I dare say, had the president not gotten elected, I'm not sure we'd see that. I really don't know that we would. But these companies...
There's a variety of reasons why we should celebrate dodging that particular bullet.
Whew, and it becomes more evident every single day. And the Democrat Party, by the way, they got no message but stupid ones. It's incredible. This crazy song that they were singing yesterday, most of which we can't even play on the air. We'll see if we can get a snippet queued up for you. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
If you're feeling anxious.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert. SuperTalk Mississippi.
The great Steely Dan. You know, we golfers, Rhino, when we strike the ball off the heel of the club, we refer to that as a Healy Dan, by the way. Okay, so we got some sound. Could you find something in that little event yesterday where all those Democrats were singing, but also, we might say, invoking the F-bomb multiple times.
Yeah, this is basically, well, you can hear the hippies left over from the original hippie movement, because these are all the old farts that are trying to lead this, and it's just embarrassing.
Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against Josh. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon's kept within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk. Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Oh, my gosh. Oh, geez. I don't even know what to say about that. Just crazy. So, also, right here in the state of Mississippi, turn our attention to that, Charles and Matheson said, ouch, stop. It was pretty brutal. Oh, you know, something else we should celebrate. You know, I'm thinking about, that's Kool and the Gang is the one I'm thinking about, right? Not Earth, Wind, and Fire.
I mean, they both have a song called
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm thinking about the Kool and the Gang rendition of it. But something else there. we should celebrate is the cancellation of the prohibition on incandescent light bulbs. That's just one of those things that just, you feel good about it. It does absolutely zero, not squat. But I believe that the president signed legislation yesterday.
It just goes back and forth.
An executive order, excuse me.
Obama banned them. Trump did away with the ban. Biden brought it back to appease the greenies. Trump's doing away with the ban.
I'm telling you, it's executive order ping pong is what it feels like. It's ridiculous. But that's pretty good, is it not? I'm into that. I like incandescent light bulbs. I really do. Now, the LED, they last longer, consume less electricity.
Allegedly.
That's right.
I mean, they do consume less electricity, but lasting longer? Not really.
Then there's the heat. There's some heat produced by incandescents that LEDs don't. All that sort of stuff. But I like the light. I like the shade of light produced by the incandescent bulbs versus the LED. Is that a problem? I mean, it is to the left. Oh, my gosh, you're killing the planet. Unbelievable.
These are the same people that would probably complain if they had to work in an office with fluorescent lighting.
That's true.
There's not enough natural light. You don't care about the workers.
You know, I was thinking about this. They're blasting the Doge team because it primarily consists of 20-somethings, right? Can't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. However, your buddy, Greta
Thunberg.
Oh, we got to do everything she says when she's 13, right? the list of double standard hypocrisy, it would consume a few shows, would it not, if we went through it? But that is absolutely the case. It's totally incredible. Right here in the state of Mississippi, taxes. Got to talk about that because we've got a bill that came out of the House of Representatives, HB 1, sweeping tax reform that would eventually eliminate the state income tax. Would take 10 years to fully eliminate. Well, the Senate had promised they've got a version coming out. Apparently, that is happening today. In fact, there's likely to be a press release from the Mississippi State Senate any moment. Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, of course, who presides over the state Senate, is expected to hold a press conference in about 30 minutes or so, rolling out this new plan coming out of the Senate. Now, here's what I think it's going to include, and this is based on discussions with key senators involved in the design of this plan, and I've actually modeled it. It will stop short of full elimination of the income tax. This is what I expect. It would reduce the income tax probably to 3%. Now, the House plan, just for comparative purposes, would reduce the income tax rate to 3% in 2027 and then eliminate it fully in 0.3% annual increments over 10 years. Now, keep in mind where we are today. The 2024 taxes, you're busy getting your paperwork together to complete that return. Many of you perhaps have already done so. The 24 tax rate is 4.7% of all taxable income north of $10,000. That's after standard deduction and personal exemptions. And then next year, tax year 2026, the rate will be 4.4%. Pardon me, this year, 4.4%, 2025. 4.7 in 24, 4.4 in 25. Next year, 26, goes to 4%. That was in accordance with the original, shouldn't say original, but the tax reform bill that passed in 2022. It got rid of the 4% bracket in 23. It took the 5 down to 4.7 in 24, to 4.4 in 25, to 4 in 26. Stops there. The bill out of the House would take it to 3 in 27 and then 0 in 37. The bill coming out of the Senate, I think what you're going to see is a reduction of the state income tax rate down to 3%. That phased in over 3 years, beginning in 26. Maybe they'll adjust it and it will start in 27. I'm not sure yet, but the bottom line is it terminates at 3%. So the other provisions would include no increase in sales taxes, general sales taxes, that's everything except groceries. The grocery tax, sales tax on groceries, is going to decline. Not exactly sure where they're going to land on that. I would say between 3 and 5% sales tax on groceries. And then there will be an increase in the excise tax on fuel. That's a little different than the House plan, which would apply a sales tax of 5% on fuel. That's 5% of the purchase price. The Senate plan would approach that differently by increasing the current excise tax of 18.4%. I'm going to say it's going to go up by 9 cents a gallon is what I'm expecting. Phased in over 3 years, probably. So, a quick review. The income tax will not be fully eliminated. Rather, it will be reduced to 3% in the Senate version of tax reform. It will not increase the general sales tax. It will reduce the sales tax on groceries, and it will increase the excise tax on fuel. I'm guessing by 9 cents phased in. So that, in a nutshell, is the Senate bill. It also would not change the way the proceeds from the Mississippi Lottery Corporation are currently transferred. Those go right now, as you know, to the State Highway Fund. The House bill would take the first $100 million of net proceeds in a year to the Public Employees Retirement System. I don't anticipate any provision for that in this tax reform package. Pretty significant difference between the House and the Senate bill. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Well, when we going to get them in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Still mad about that. That's Kevin Cronin and the boys from Champaign, Illinois, REO Speedwagon. Roll with the changes. That's a good tune to drive to, by the way. Just want you to know that. I once heard using profanity was evidence of a weak mind trying to express itself forcibly, says Don in Boonville. Well, we had a bunch of weak minds trying to express themselves forcibly.
It depends on the culture.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I do believe the Irish would take offense to that.
Yeah.
Because the few Irish people I've met that cursed like sailors used certain words, and I'll quote an Irish comedian, as a chisel to break the language barrier between me and you.
Gotcha. Okay. They should have done the halftime show instead of Kendrick, says Casey from Summit. Brian in Madison says, please don't play that again. Oh, gosh. Has any of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve that President Biden released been replaced? Actually, Biden has been steadily replacing it. It's important from a strategic perspective, but keep in mind it's honestly it's a small amount of oil relative to the amount that we consume in this country. So I think it's about 90 days of total consumption, if I'm not mistaken, and he released about a third of it, which was dumb. It absolutely did nothing to bring the cost of gas down, but most of that's been slowly replenished. On the C Spire text line, that was actually, that was among our first text there. Please don't tell me these stupid Democrats singing that crazy song yesterday will be next year's halftime show, says Jerry in Pontotoc. Wow. Let's see. Toolman Taylor will love incandescents coming back, says Jeff in Carrollton. And I think you just shared with us, somebody said, wasn't it Bush that banned them? But it's been on a bit of a roller coaster, has it not?
Bush signed the legislation, what was it, the EISA or something like that,
okay,
that Obama added regulations to that had the phase-out of incandescent bulbs for the compact fluorescent bulb variety, or the LED variety. I think there was the opposite in there. But then Trump came in his first term and did away with that, and then Biden came back in and said, no incandescent bulbs, and it's just been back and forth really before the action could really go into effect.
Okay. So, but
that's why you've seen incandescent bulbs on the shelves since Trump's first term, because by the time Biden got around to banning them again, now Trump's president again.
Back and forth. Well, I have noticed that you can't find them in the stores, right? I've bought some online that are just surplus inventory still hanging out around there. I've seen them on eBay and so forth.
I want to say the Biden ban went into effect in August or September of 2023, something like that.
Okay.
But you could sell any stock you had.
Gotcha. Well, and then once that was totally sold, that's it, right? Nothing.
Unless you're importing it. There was no ban on import.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. But I haven't seen that.
That's the weird thing is, like, you can order them off Amazon or Temu or Wish or whatever, and if they're coming from Canada or Mexico or China or wherever, okay, well, they're not banned there.
Gotcha. So the Doge group are up on the Hill right now testifying about much of the wasteful spending that they have identified, and they're discussing that. I was listening to it live on the air before we started the show, and they're just laying out all the stuff they're coming up with. Now, this improper payments thing that we started talking about in 23, the CBO told us that, 23. Yeah, and that's with a very limited examination. They said, we think there are $237 billion worth of payments coming out of the Treasury that shouldn't be. They're going to parties that are not eligible or not qualified, do not meet all the various requirements and criteria to receive such payments. Everything from Social Security to Medicare to Medicaid, SNAP benefits, you go down the list. But there's been no interest on the part of the administration, certainly the prior administration, which now we learn is mostly consists of Democrats that are in these positions. They don't want to shut this down. That's what the Democrats on the Hill are protesting as well. In other words, they want to keep the gravy train going of all these improper payments going out the door to people who don't qualify for them, don't deserve them. These aren't true safety net payments. This is just welfare fraud. In fact, before I started the show, the person that was testifying described herself as a certified welfare fraud examiner. I didn't know there was such a thing. But she was going through her analysis of all the various approaches to defraud these programs, and it's widespread. It's been going on a while. And so shining the light on it. That's what the Department of Government Efficiency has done. Of course, they're trying to shut all that down. But so I look at this and I say, well, from a business perspective, you would concern yourself with any financial metrics of an organization. You want to know about debt to equity, free cash flow, return on investment, return on equity. These are terms that I think most of these bureaucrats aren't aware of.
If they are, they're certainly not prioritizing it.
Agree. And they don't want to talk about it. I don't think that they're proficient, honestly, in how any of those metrics would be used to measure, to gauge financial stability or financial performance. And I know a lot of people say, well, the government's different than business. We shouldn't run it like that. Really? We shouldn't be concerned about debt to equity, free cash flow, return on investment, return on equity? Of course we should. Now, it's a little more difficult to apply those metrics. It's more straightforward in a private balance sheet, income statement scenario, but it's still, they still apply. Those metrics still absolutely apply because you, the taxpayers, are essentially the shareholders of this gargantuan monstrosity of a government we have.
And that's one way to frame this that I don't think anybody's really taken a stab at. So I'll give it a go. Considering what you've stated before on the show about the percentages of who actually pays taxes and who doesn't, who pays the largesse and who doesn't, how much would you have to cut out of the federal spending to equal, say, the bottom quartile of taxpayers or the bottom half of taxpayers?
Well, the top half, as you have heard me say before, account for 97.3% of revenue. The bottom half of households in this country account for 2.7% of the $2.4 trillion of individual income tax revenue. Now, I'd have to do the math real quick. You're talking about what, $400 billion from the $400 million, right, from the 2% or the bottom 50%. I've actually got the figures here. Here's where I'm going with this. The spending's $7 trillion.
Right.
So
everybody's talking about, USAID is only this tiny percentage of government spending. Yeah, that tiny percentage of government spending is the entirety of what the bottom half of America paid into taxes.
That's about right. That's crazy to think about. But I think that math does work out. That is totally crazy.
So unless you're in the top half of earners in the country, DOJ has already managed to cut spending that wasted your tax dollars.
That's absolutely true. So I'm looking at it right now. Yep, that's right. They paid $46 billion. That's exactly right. The bottom half about equal with, right? About equal with the amount of money spent on the USAID program. That is amazingly enough, the bottom 50%. That's 1.5 million taxpayers relative to the top 50%, which is 13 million taxpayers. It's hard to believe there's only 1.5 million taxpayers in the bottom 50%. That's 10% of total taxpayers are in the bottom 50. You see the point I'm making here, right? Which means all the taxes are paid at the higher end of the scale. It's something the Democrats not only refuse to accept, they tell you just the opposite. They're just lying. Great point. Coming right back.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Once upon a midnight
with you in the Element Well studio. Rhino and I on the break doing a little research. We're trying to find out whether or not there are any resolutions or bills related to the citizen ballot measure process in Mississippi. And we just looked through a bunch of them. They all died. We're trying to find out if there are any remaining. I know the House and Senate are both in session. If there's any, I think there was only one in the Senate that I'm aware of, Rhino. That was Senator Nicole Boyd's bill. We discussed that a couple of weeks ago. It really wasn't a robust measure, honestly. It was just, you guys can go out there and put something and send it to us, and we'll think about it, but we still are the ones that have to turn it into law or into an amendment to our Constitution. But it looks to me like all the resolutions in the House, they're resolutions because they would have to be referred to the ballot for the people to ratify, because you're talking about the need to amend the Constitution of the state of Mississippi, and which requires no signature by the governor. Just goes out to the ballot for the people to vote on, and once it, of course, passes through the legislature, the House and Senate. But I don't see any bills alive.
Yeah, the only one that I can't confirm is dead is from Representative Price Wallace.
He would be, that would be likely from him based on...
HCR 30 did pass as amended out of the House Constitution Committee. But I don't see any further action after that.
And in a nutshell, what does it do that you see there?
It's relatively short. It's 10 pages, and it changes it to read, the people reserve to themselves the right to exercise the legislative power of the state to propose new laws and to amend or repeal existing laws by initiative and to approve or reject the same in an election independent of the legislature in the manner prescribed in and subject to the provisions of. And it breaks it all down.
So there you go. We got one alive. Ben from Madison says it's garbage. So what don't you like about that, Ben? Neither Rhino nor I have analyzed that one in tremendous detail. It really hasn't, that issue hasn't seen a lot of discussion, a lot of press this particular session. It's almost like folks have forgotten about it. But what, you see anything? Oh, he said 60% requirements for passage is what Ben just sent us. Yeah, they seem to be hanging on that. And honestly, Ben, I don't think that's where most members of the House are on this issue. I think that is an effort to get support from the Senate, is my opinion. You think, Rhino, that may be the case? Because anything they've ever proposed, it's included a higher bar than a simple majority. Not to pass at the ballot, but even for something to be referred by the legislature, as I recall, to the ballot for people to vote on. That had a higher bar in the legislature. So I hear you there, Ben. It might be a concern by the citizens when they find out that there's really nothing that's likely to happen. This just feels like, Rhino, to me, this is setting up to be a legislative session where little to nothing occurs. Start with the House's priority, elimination of the income tax, based on my analysis of, and again, I haven't seen the legislation yet. This is just in my discussions with key senators involved in the drafting of said legislation. The details I shared in a prior segment today. I don't see the House passing that, the Senate's version. Now, can they work something out in conference? I get this feeling that the House is not going to support anything that stops short of full elimination of the income tax. I think even a reduction of the income tax is not something that they would sign on to. I could be wrong, obviously. Just my opinion and speculation, nothing more or less at this point. I do think there are concerns on the Senate side, more so than the House, of what our spending picture looks like going out. I said, if you guys had a chance to review the article I wrote about HB1, I do have concerns about the federal government trimming the Medicaid program, which would impose significant costs on the states, additional costs, because we receive so much money from the federal government to operate that program. There's more discussion about that coming out of Washington as recent as yesterday and today that confirms even further my suspicion that we're going to see major reform to the Medicaid program, which could transfer more of the cost responsibility down to the states. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays. We are live in the Element Wealth studio on this
Hump Day.
It's our pleasure to welcome now Scott Sands, host of the Scott Sands Show. Scott, good to see you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me. I know it's a special day in Mississippi as everybody at SuperTalk and across the state remember the life and legacy of Paul Gallo.
Absolutely. 2 o'clock today at Broadmoor Baptist Church in Madison. We will be celebrating the life of the late, great Paul Gallo. Did so much for the state, for this network, for those of us who were fortunate to sit in the chair that he occupied for so many years, man. He, one of a kind. We were blessed to have him as part of this network and certainly his contributions to our state. We just got word that it looks like Tulsi Gabbard is good to go. She has been confirmed.
She was just confirmed by the U.S. Senate. I saw that Mitch McConnell was the lone Republican to vote against her confirmation.
No surprise there, is it, Scott?
No, not really. Disappointment, but not a surprise, really.
Yeah. She was able to persuade a couple of Republican sort of holdouts, I guess, Murkowski. One, Susan Collins, you always got to get through them. I know that this pejorative rhino gets tossed around, R-I-N-O, quite a bit, and our politics has for many years. And here in the state of Mississippi, we call people that are like orders of magnitude to the right of Elisa Murkowski a rhino. They truly do sort of represent that label. But in those states, Scott, I'm not sure we could do any better.
No, and I'm actually somewhat surprised Tulsi Gabbard made it through.
Yeah.
I know there are concerns about her experience, about her background, all sorts of allegations leveled against Tulsi Gabbard during her confirmation process. When I was on SuperTalk last time, I kind of expected either Tulsi or Kash Patel to fail the confirmation process. If Tulsi's making it through, I think it's looking good for Kash Patel as well.
Well, what do you think that means as far as RFK's confirmation?
RFK may be more of a challenge. I think that there are questions about his background, about his intentions, but I do believe, as many questions as you may have about some of the folks that Donald Trump has nominated, that you've got to give him the cabinet he wants to complete the agenda the American public voted for.
Yeah. I will say this, get your take on this. I'm not too crazy about his nominee for labor secretary. That's kind of the next one I think we're going to see that will encounter some challenges, and that's because she is a union darling. She's very much in favor of eliminating right-to-work laws. And I'm not really sure what Mr. Trump's thinking there.
I'm not that familiar with her background, to be perfectly honest. It might be a toss to some of his union support. Yeah. But again, I think the fight against all of Donald Trump's nominees will continue to intensify as you see more and more backlash against Elon Musk and Doge. I think it all kind of comes to a head from the Democrats on that one particular point.
Yeah, I think you're right. Of course, the Doge subcommittee up on the Hill right now testifying. I tuned into some of that early this morning. Not sure if you caught that, but they're shining the light on what many of us suspected, and there have been others who have reported. I talked earlier about even the CBO told us a couple of years ago about this massive amount of what they term as improper payments. But I think what really brought it to a head was uncovering the nonsense at USAID, which is anything but legitimate aid to the truly needy, as the organization was originally created to do. What do you think about all that?
You know, I'm missing the fireworks of that hearing to be on your show, but I'm sure we'll see the highlights on social media throughout the afternoon. I don't understand the protests against what Doge is doing. Now, you can certainly have some hesitations about the access that Elon Musk and his team have to our personal information, and you have to be able to question what Elon's private agenda may be for doing all of this. I mean, you can certainly say that he's being patriotic and he sees the waste and inefficiencies and he wants to contribute to America's success, and that's probably a valid point. But when you're that smart, when you're that rich, you're not devoting this much time and effort into something this massive unless you're expected to get something out of the deal at the end of the day. And I don't know what that may be, and it may not be nefarious. And I certainly, with the amount of money he's cutting, pay the man. Give him some credit for what he's been able to uncover so far. He actually doesn't have any real power other than to just point out where our tax money has been going for so long. And that kind of leads me to something I wanted to talk with you about as you're looking at what's happened with USAID, and we're uncovering some of the waste and fraud and corruption in FEMA. A lot of talk about dismantling FEMA. That's an agency that's been pretty beneficial to Mississippi over the years with hurricanes, and I know you've got some severe weather that may run through the state today. What happens if FEMA goes away? Can the state of Mississippi handle emergency response without that kind of federal support?
Well, I think handling the response it has to be distinguished from the funds that would be received from the federal government. Our Mississippi Emergency Management Association is quite qualified. Do they have all the assets and the resources they need for a major response? I really don't know, but I've talked to the head of the agency multiple times, and we've seen them in action. They are fantastic. They're highly qualified. They're highly capable, highly competent. They do have sophisticated systems and so forth to manage emergencies. But there's money and other assets, of course, that we receive from the federal government that could leave a void, not just here, but, of course, any state for any sort of catastrophic response. It's a concern. But here's the deal, Scott. What do we pick to cut funding? This USAID thing, I think, is great, $45 billion, but we have a $2 trillion deficit. We're sort of running out of things to cut because the president and high-ranking Republicans have said, hands off so much of our spending, they're relegating us to only a sliver of the total spending to even toy with.
It's interesting because I think USAID and American aid does good around the world. And as Elon Musk moves quickly, he's going to break a few eggs, and they may have to take a few steps backwards to fix some things that they're breaking in the meantime. And that's fine. I'm actually fine with that. The danger as we withdraw more money from foreign aid is who steps in to fill that void. Will it be China? Will it be Russia? Will it be another adversary that can fill the void that's left by the lack of American support? And what does that mean for foreign policy 10, 20, 30 years down the road? I think that America has always had a challenge of being short-sighted. And again, I'm not advocating for spending billions and trillions of dollars on foreign countries for stupid programs that don't really make a difference in the world. But we've got countries like Russia and China that are playing the long game and thinking strategically 100 years down the road instead of 2 or 3 years down the road, as the American government seems to do. And everything changes in America every 2 years, every 4 years with every election. And I think that's something that we need to think about more closely, and what the long-term effects of a vacuum of influence around the world might leave us with.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because all the misguided actions have kind of tainted the original purpose and the good that the agency does, and to the point where everybody says, well, just get rid of the whole thing. And I think that seems to be what's happening now that tends to be popular. Pennies and paper straws. What do you think about that?
I think if there's one thing that could unite this country, it's getting rid of paper straws. Is there anybody who actually enjoys paper straws? And look, I love turtles. They're cute. I don't want to see turtles dying and choking on plastic straws, but maybe there's a better solution than paper, which is going to dissolve in water. I mean, that's something I think we learned in first or second grade in Gulfport, Mississippi, when I was in school. It seems to me to be obvious, and I don't know anybody that would be opposed to letting us be able to drink our drinks without the straw dissolving.
It's great to hear Trump talk about it. It's it melts in your mouth. You can't do this. It's unbelievable. I love when he gets into those details.
So funny.
Scott, really appreciate you joining us with your perspective today, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon. Appreciate it.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Scott Sands, host of the Scott Sands Show. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Be sure the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We are back in the Element Wealth studio. So we were just discussing earlier the Senate's plan to reform taxes. I don't think we're going to get anything. We may get some agreement between the House and Senate should any of the legislation make it to conference and they'll hash out a plan. I just don't see it at this point. I really believe the House wants to eliminate the income tax fully. And anything that stops short of that would not be acceptable. And look, there are strong feelings on both sides of this matter. There are many who are for elimination of the income tax, but don't want to see an increase in sales taxes of any way, shape, or form to achieve that, to accommodate that loss of revenue. There's some people who say we can just cut spending and that will be sufficient. But you'd have to find a third, roughly, of spending, 30% of spending to make the budget balance without income tax revenue. We paid $2 million to a prestigious consulting firm, did the state auditor, to identify opportunities to cut spending, and they, for that $2 million, came up with what amounts to about 4% of total spending. You need to find 30. So, and most of that likely has got some issues in terms of implementing it. There's always another side to those stories, and that would need to be analyzed in detail. I'll pay income taxes for another couple of years if it ensures he's done when his term is over, says Thomas, referring to Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. I'll point out to you, these concerns in the Senate come from more than just the lieutenant governor. I know everybody thinks that those guys in the Senate and gals are just carrying the water for the lieutenant governor, and to a great extent, yeah, you have to fall in line if you want to be effective. That's true.
Until it gets out of committee and on the floor for a vote so the voters can know who to vote out, it will still fall at the feet of Delbert Hosemann.
That is true. And what that would require is changing our laws to require thumbs up, down voting in committees and record of that. I told you, I've been in committee meetings. Nobody says anything. All in favor say aye. All opposed. Okay, the ayes have it. I mean, literally how it works.
It's not how it's supposed to work. That's how it works.
Agree. And so,
and that's the mindset that has gotten the United States in the situation it's in.
No doubt. But also, it's fair to point out, those committee meetings are live streamed. You can watch them. How many people do that, though? Usually it's lobbyists. But most of them are in the meetings. They're in the rooms. I don't know how many people are tuned in and take the time to go lobby. Thomas, your photo, you keep sending that. Stop it. It's useless. It's meaningless. Stop it, man. I'm not even going to tell you what's in it. But you can think all you want that this is just one person driving this, but I'm telling you it's not. And until you get your tail down to the Senate and the Capitol and the House and talk one-on-one to some of these people, you're just guessing. I do. I'm not guessing. I've spoken to them one-on-one. And I know where they stand on this stuff. And it's not just one person. Now, I will say that I do think the lieutenant governor overall opposes eliminating the income tax and is concerned about any loss of revenue to the state. He's just wired differently from that perspective, differently than, say, the governor or the Speaker of the House. That's my opinion about that. But my fear is we're going to get nothing. That they're not going to be able to come to an agreement, something they can coalesce around to push out. There are a lot of people that don't want us to increase taxes to generate on fuel to generate more revenue for the Department of Transportation. You're going to see that in either bill. So if neither one of these bills passes, might we see kind of a watered-down bill that just increases taxes on fuel to try to accommodate the request from the transportation commissioners and the executive director, Brad White, of the Mississippi Department of Transportation, all of whom have said, we don't have enough money to keep the roads in shape and to build new capacity projects.
Well, I can answer that. That's a big no.
I don't think that's going to happen either. So
because the politicians are more worried about their next election. So they're obviously not going to just, you got to pay more gas.
I hear you. I'm with Thomas. The lieutenant governor's on his last term in politics, I hope. It could be. Remains to be seen. Elon Musk needs to leave the veterans alone. This is on the C Spire text line. He has proposed that veterans who have retired and drawing a VA pension for disabilities will have to choose between one of the two. So I asked the question, are you talking about receiving disability benefits plus a pension? He says correct. I don't know. This could be a she. I'm not sure. It doesn't identify. We served 20 years for our pension, and we deserve it. Our disability compensations for injuries and things that happened to us while we were on active duty that we should be reimbursed for. So, and I'm not arguing with that, and I wouldn't even know how to understand what Elon Musk is thinking. And I've seen no reports to that effect, so I'll trust you in that regard. But here's what I know. Just talking broadly at the highest level about the federal budget. Switching to that for a second. A statement I've made numerous times. We got 435 in the House and 100 in the Senate. And in the ranks of conservatives and those who would like to see more fiscal discipline and responsibility, the message is you go up there and make sure you cut spending and rein it in. But by the way, we need this. Don't cut it for me or my purpose or my state or my community. And you multiply that by the 535, and you end up with 36 trillion in debt, and that's been going on for decades. So I think something that's about to hit us in the head, that's not getting a lot of attention, that I mentioned before on the program, is Medicaid. You guys know what that is? That is a program that provides health insurance to certain coverage groups, and it is jointly funded between the federal government and the states. In the state of Mississippi, the federal government funds 78% roughly of the Medicaid program in our state. The state of Mississippi covers 22%. Total cost of the program is now approaching $8 billion. It's larger than the general fund budget in the state of Mississippi. I think it is a prime candidate for spending cuts at the federal level, and I support it, by the way. But now there are reports coming out of Washington that Republicans are looking at imposing a work requirement. That wouldn't apply to the state of Mississippi. This would only apply to those states that have expanded Medicaid, and that was a consideration in any efforts to expand Medicaid in Mississippi, both on the House and Senate side. Last year, it got a lot of debate. But there's also talk about reducing the federal's portion of the total amount in order to pass the Trump tax cuts. You've got to have some corresponding spending cuts that would allow the Senate parliamentarian to say, yep, that qualifies for passage under reconciliation and not requiring the full 60-vote process in the Senate, filibuster proof. The program's now about $620 billion a year, the Medicaid program, but it's quickly headed to $1 trillion. It is growing across the entire country. So, point is, when you look at tax reform, which I totally support here in the state, including full elimination of the income tax in a responsible fashion, you can't discount the fact that the federal government could likely drop the hammer on the states by trimming its spending on the program, which would certainly help from a federal deficit perspective and debt addition perspective. But it means the state to just operate as is, status quo, is going to have to come up with more money. I fully expect, even without that the cost of health care continues to rise and the demands on that program from a cost perspective are increasing. I fully expect the Division of Medicaid to present its budget to the legislature this year where they ask for a significant amount of additional funding for the program, $200 million perhaps. So any discussion about cutting spending in the state, it makes it really difficult, that prospect difficult, when you got to spend $200 million more just to get the $7 billion from the Fed coming right back.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Thanks for joining us. The deficit train in Washington, Rhino, out of control. According to the United States Treasury, the latest report, you can subscribe to that, by the way, if you have an interest in reading their 200-300-page monthly report. I poured through the latest one. It shows that for the first 4 months of fiscal year 2025, the fiscal year for the federal government begins October 1. So October through January, the deficit, you ready for this? $838 billion. That's $306 billion more than fiscal year 24 for the same period. First 4 months of fiscal year 25 compared to 24. An increase of $306 billion. You can do the math there. 3 times that figure, we're on a $2.5 trillion deficit pace. 2.5. I predicted 2. I missed it by $500 billion. I had no idea that we were looking at that sort of deficit. And this is the point I'm making, and I know people sometimes get upset with me because I say, look, that's great. It's a small amount of money. You made the point because compared to the amount of taxes the bottom 50% pay, which is absolutely accurate, comes in at about $45 to $48 billion. Just eliminating USAID is equal to the amount the bottom 50% pay. Unfortunately, however, that is about 0.5% of total spending. That's how out of control it is.
That's how outrageous the federal government spending has gotten.
Unbelievable. So,
which really, if you boil it down to its basic facts, it tells you that if you pay any taxes whatsoever to the federal government, you are paying far too much to the federal government.
It's we run the federal government largely on debt, is the bottom line. So, on the C Spire text line, let's flip the taxes. Say I send $10K to the Fed and $2K to the state. Flip that, and the Fed wouldn't have to send money to the states. Each state could take care of itself. Well, and really, when you look at the amount the Fed sends down to the states, it comes through 2 major programs. By far and away, the largest Medicaid. Second is education, and education's honestly is $180 billion. That's crazy to even think about the fact that that's kind of pocket change when you're dealing with multi-trillion-dollar budgets. But it's Medicaid. If you really wanted to have a meaningful, measurable impact on the deficit, you could just cut the federal Medicaid program out. Now, that would mean that the states would have a choice of how they wanted to operate, if at all, any sort of safety net health insurance program. But they'd have to fund it. If the state of Mississippi kept the program in place right now exactly the same, it would have to come up with $7 billion that would not be received any longer from the federal government. That means essentially we'd have to double our taxes. Double. Otherwise, we're going to just continue to see the Medicaid program grow at the federal level. 75 million Americans now enrolled in the free health care program of Medicaid. Just under 50 in Medicare. That would be senior health care that folks pay into during their working years. But those 2 programs combined, about $1.6 trillion. And they're going to continue to increase. There's no doubt about it. So the math doesn't work, is the point made there. Keith in Meridian said, I bought a case of each of the incandescent 60, 75, and 90 watts. When Obama made the announcement, I still have light bulbs running out the ears. I did too. I used most of them. I still have a few left. Good for you. Mississippi residents don't need a ballot initiative process, says Blake in the Delta. The last time we had one, we nearly legalized marijuana. But we did do that, Blake. We have a legal medical marijuana program, and that's what that ballot initiative would have accomplished. And
technically, it got legalized twice.
That's true. Once at the ballot, once by the legislature, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So we do have such a program. Now, to your point, Blake, I think you'd likely see, if it were permitted, and we had a ballot measure process, a measure that would make its way to the ballot that would fully legalize recreational marijuana. Many states have done that. Every state that's done it has passed it. More and more. What is it now, Rhino? 29 states, I think, maybe have some form of marijuana legalization. And of those, maybe 20, that's medical. And of those, maybe 20, I think, have recreational. I mean, that number continues to increment.
39 of the 50 states have it for medical use and 24 states for recreational use.
Okay, so I missed by 10 at least those who have it for medical, but I was pretty close on the recreational. So 24, half the states roughly, have legalized recreational marijuana. I believe if a measure went to the ballot here in the state of Mississippi, it would pass. It's my opinion. Let's see. DJ and Summit wanted an explanation of what these tax bills would mean to Mississippi seniors. And that's always a controversial issue because Mississippi seniors do not pay income taxes on retirement income. Your Social Security, your 401k, your pension income, exempt from income taxes in the state of Mississippi. There are a few other states that have similar tax laws. And so any increase in sales taxes without some offsetting decrease in sales taxes, which is the plan contemplated by the House, would perhaps result in an overall tax increase. I did run some models, DJ, and by the way, I hope you check the article out at supertalk.fm, and you'll see an explanation, a link to some of those models, actually all of those models. Our J.T. Mitchell, our news director, did a good job of categorizing those to the various taxpayer scenarios. The final one being, of course, in that list there, retired folks. You'll see a thumbnail. You can click on it, blow it up. But I did do some case studies. A retired individual who makes $45,000 a year, lives by themselves, files as a single taxpayer, has a gross income of $45,000, spends $8,000 on groceries, $8,000 on non-groceries, and $1,200 a year on fuel. I get it. Everybody has a different situation. This is just what I selected as kind of an average scenario. In 2026, it would result in a net tax increase of $50 for the year, $84 in 27, declines to $68 in 28, and then it continues to move downward to 2023, where it would produce a net savings of $12. So that's one example. I did a retired couple making $90,000 a year, spending $14 on groceries, $18 on non, $2,500 on fuel. Net tax increase of $128 in 26, $227 in 2027, $199 in 2028, all the way out to 2036, where they get a net savings of $25. So minor adjustment, honestly, to seniors, mostly negative, just because of the increase in the fuel tax, the increase in the general sales tax, and offset somewhat by the decrease in groceries. It just depends on how you spend your money. On groceries, non-groceries, and fuel, doesn't matter as far as your income is concerned because that's fully exempt. The Senate bill, on the other hand, does not increase the sales tax on general sales tax. It does decrease the grocery sales tax. It does also increase sales tax on fuel, or should say taxes on fuel, in the form of increased excise taxes. A little different approach compared to the House legislation. That's how that would work. Why is it so hard to get the ballot initiative? Reps and Senate, the House and Senate could split the difference on signatures. It's more than just signatures. This is on the C Spire text line. It's the threshold for passage, for example. Signatures are. There are a lot of members of both chambers that honestly don't want a ballot initiative. I do not believe, Rhino, that I'm misrepresenting. You and I have heard some members say that.
Yeah, but it seems like there are far more that are unwilling to publicly say that than there are that are willing to publicly state they are against a ballot initiative.
And I would also say that with respect to tax reform. There are people, there's no doubt, and somebody on the C Spire text line said, yeah, but Delbert's the president of the Senate, and he has a lot of stroke and weight. I totally agree with that, completely. However, what I'm trying to pass on is there are members of the Senate who don't have to be persuaded by the lieutenant governor to oppose full elimination of the income tax. That's all I'm saying. There are people in the House that do, by the way. By the Speaker, coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
When we ran a...
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
All right, so I forgot what you told me on the break. I was dealing with Ben there. Something I thought we needed to tell the people. What was that, Rhino? About something going on in Washington.
Oh, RFK Jr.'s made it through the procedural vote, and his vote will be held tomorrow. And if the procedural vote goes anything like the vote tomorrow, he will pass.
Yeah, and Tulsi Gabbard confirmed.
Tulsi Gabbard's
She's
confirmed.
in. NASA just announced they're moving up the return date for the stranded Starliner astronauts. You know, I think Elon Musk is working on something too, right? To go extract
Trump
them.
asked him to help out in any way he could.
Love it. CC in Senatobia. How many liberals live at the corner of rationale and common sense zero? They can't find the place. If the United States was a company, it would have had to file for bankruptcy, says William. Actually, not true, William. I know that sounds reasonable, and it's bankruptcy occurs when your assets do not, or I should say, are exceeded by your liabilities. That's when you're effectively bankrupt. Well, if you look at the assets of the United States, they still dramatically exceed our liabilities. That's really not the issue with the $36 trillion of debt. The issue is we have to expand the money supply to pay the debt, and doing so is inflationary. So when we don't collect enough money, actually that's not the correct way to present it. When we spend more money than we collect in taxes, we got to go borrow it. And that involves printing it, honestly, expanding it. Now, it's not physical printing, just so you guys know. It's all electronic entries on the books. We don't physically print currency to do that. But still, though, the metaphor applies. We're adding more money into the supply, and that's inflationary. Simple as that.
And every time they press go on the printer, your dollar is worth less.
Correct. And that's what causes inflation. We shared with you earlier, we got a rather concerning inflation report this morning. CPI went up higher than expected, clearly indicates inflation is nowhere close to being under control. The oil and gas companies, the energy companies have told the Trump administration, yeah, we're not so on board with rushing out there and producing more oil, which is thought to be the way to bring the price of goods down. By the way, you've probably seen there's problems with the dead-gum bird flu, and the egg producers are saying expect the price of eggs to go up 20% this year. So that's not good news on that front. Bottom line is we got work to do with respect to fiscal policy and economic matters. We got a Senate and a House that seem to be drifting further apart, by the way, on what they think this one big, beautiful bill should look like.
Imagine that.
I know. It's so just so off-putting, honestly. And it, almost disgraceful that we can't seem to work something out here. Blows my mind that Americans just don't get it. Fraud and waste is just that. Fraud and waste. What the hell? Yeah, I hear you. And even the CBOs pointed that out. It's nothing new. Nothing new. It's been going on forever. It's just we finally have somebody that's serious about it. And I think bringing in a third party to expose it and shine the light on it is the most effective approach. Because you know this, there are members of Congress that, even Republicans, don't want to touch that for fear that somebody that gives them money or votes for them would lose their little cushy gig. That's exactly what happens. And so we get
that includes members that you would expect, like Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, those kind of Republicans.
Right.
But it also ensnares those that you wouldn't quite expect.
That's so true.
Like Senator Paul from Kentucky. He's got 3 or 4 different NGOs that receives money from USAID.
That's exactly
right. He didn't personally receive any money. His name is attached to those NGOs. Which the irony of the the nomenclature NGO, the non-governmental organization. You keep hearing about how so many of these are not going to be able to make ends meet. They're not going to be able to survive if they don't get government money. Then why the heck are you an NGO?
I agree.
Non-governmental.
Exactly.
If you're an NGO and you can't survive without the government's money, a.k.a. your tax dollars, then you don't deserve to be in business.
Too many people feeding at the old trough. Have been for way too long. All these crazy grants and stuff that get sent down to colleges and universities and companies and individuals and researchers and all this stuff. It's their whole life. It's just doing that off the taxpayer's dime.
And as wasteful as that is, it's more acceptable than just throwing money in the fire that is foreign aid.
Right. I agree.
Why are we keeping other countries' media afloat? Why are we keeping their health industry afloat? Why are we keeping their governments afloat?
It makes no sense. And this has been exposed, and it's being addressed. Defense budget, that was the question on the ceasefire text line. Yeah, the president and Republican leaders have indicated they wish to increase defense spending. Increase. So, not touching that, not touching Medicare, not touching Social Security, can't touch debt interest. You're relegated to about 25% of the total spending, of which 2/3 of that is Medicaid. That's why the state of Mississippi better hold on to its shorts there, because I think you're going to see some massive changes in the Medicaid program that's going to cause a budgetary problem for us. We're coming right back after Fox News.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of the program. On this
Hump Day,
we are awaiting the arrival of Senator Jeremy England. We were advised he's caught up in some bills down there at the Senate, so we hope to have him in the studio as soon as possible. We've been talking about the Senate tax bill. Our news department's all over that. Attended the press conference conducted by Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. And still a couple of details we're trying to sort out, make sure we pass that along to you accurately. And that mainly concerns the decrease in the sales tax on groceries. And the House bill, of course, would decrease that to effective in the middle of 26 down to 4.5%. The state's portion, and then the new 1.5% local portion, so a total reduction from 7 to 6 in 2026, the second half of 2026. And then it continues to chip away, does the House bill, chip away at the grocery sales taxes and brings that all the way down to a terminal rate of 2.5% state, 1.5% local, total 4%. So, in a nutshell, the House bill takes it from the current 7% down to 4% over a 10-year period. The Senate bill, however, would decrease the sales taxes on groceries to 5% effective this year is what our understanding is, and best we can tell, it just terminates at 5%, stays at that level. So trying to find out how that would affect the diversion to cities as well, because if you're going to take the sales tax down on groceries for down from 7 to 5, as is contemplated by the Senate bill, You've got an 18.5% diversion that goes back to the municipalities. They rely heavily on that to fund city government services. So if you're going to do that, is the state going to make them whole on the loss of that revenue? So, okay. All right, so I just received a text. I asked this question to Senator Josh Harkins. He, of course, heads the Senate Finance Committee. He's a tax man in the Senate. He said that there would be an increase in the diversion to make up for the difference. Okay, so that question is answered. So the cities essentially stay whole even though we reduce the sales tax on groceries. No sales tax increase in the Senate version on non-groceries. A 9-cent phase-in of the excise tax on fuel. And then a reduction of the income tax to 2.99%. Not sure why 2.99 as opposed to 3, but it's 2.99 over 3 years. In 2030, it would be at 2.99. There, again, concerns about, I think, in the Senate side, and I know a lot of people believe this is driven exclusively by the lieutenant governor, but there are other people in the Senate that are more concerned about how this would affect the state's budgetary picture. The House's belief is that economic growth would offset the loss of the $2.2 billion of revenue from the individual income tax, plus ending the diversion to cities. That makes up about $550 million. So how do we make the cities whole? Well, they get the additional 1.5% sales tax. That's the House bill. That would take your sales tax from 7 to 8.5 on non-grocery items. That's just kind of the design of their legislation. So what happens between these two chambers, I just don't know. We will see. Delbert is a closet Democrat, says someone on the C Spire text line. He's the leader, says Andy in Tupelo. He can whip them in any direction he wants. The flag vote is a good example of him using his pulpit. He can get the senators in line if he wanted to. Most of us don't have time to drive to Jackson. We work for a living. I appreciate that. I understand. I didn't either, honestly. But I do email and call and never get a response. I would also tell you, Andy, that it wasn't just the lieutenant governor and the speaker and the governor, all of whom wanted to change the flag. The vast majority of the members in both chambers also wanted to change the flag. That wasn't just limited to them. The flag didn't change just because it's what those three people wanted.
But the key difference there is their votes are all recorded. So if you disagreed with them, you could campaign against them and vote against them.
That's a good point. That's a distinction.
You're continually blocked from knowing who is for and against conservative governance, like school choice, income tax elimination, and the like.
Because those votes occur in committees, and we don't record committee votes. You could,
but
of course,
those votes are done in committees chaired by people appointed by Delbert.
No doubt about it. And the same in the House. No doubt about it. So when Speaker of the House Philip Gunn was in place, he didn't want school choice. He would always appoint Representative Richard Bennett to head the Education Committee, who killed every school choice bill. So, yeah, look, that's
if
the
Delbert
way it works.
Doesn't want it falling at his feet, he could put somebody else in charge and let it come for a vote.
And in the case of education, it's Senator Dennis DeBar. You and I have talked about that. He no fan of school choice, of course. He made that very clear. He's made it clear multiple times. This is an area I totally disagree with the lieutenant governor on. I think we should enact robust school choice programs. I think they need to be done responsibly and prudently. There's no intention as suggested, as you know, Rhino, by the fear-mongering school choice opponents to cause any harm whatsoever to public schools. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We want to see them improve and thrive as well, and we believe that a little competition goes a long way in doing so. Right now, they got a pretty cushy gig, to be perfectly honest with you. So, but Andy, I understand you work for a living, but if you can, I would encourage you to take a look at some of the recordings of those committee meetings and the legislature in session as well. That's all recorded. You can go watch that. all day long. You don't have to be physically present to just see what's going on in your capital there. That's a pretty good thing. Let's see here. Gerard, there are also a lot of people calling and emailing their representatives and senators to change the flag. No doubt about it. And many of them said that even though they received those words of encouragement on both sides, that they felt like that the winds were in favor of changing the flag, and that's how they voted. Honestly, I wish we just put that behind us. I really do. I think it serves no purpose whatsoever. I've shared this before, and I don't mind saying it again. The largest investment in the state's history would not have come about had the flag not been changed. So you can either have a flag or you can have what's going to end up being a $30 billion investment in the central part of the state that's going to cause enormous economic outgrowth. So it directly influenced the Compass investment in Lauderdale County. That doesn't happen without what happened in Madison. And that wouldn't have happened without changing the flag. And you could say, well, we just don't need them. Well, yeah, we kind of do. We need investment. We need economic growth. We need high-paying knowledge worker jobs. I'm tired of subsidizing the other states. What do I mean by that? We pay a bunch of money to educate people in our fantastic universities. And I've said this a million times before. I know I'm beating the horse to death, but it's still critical. It's still important. I want to see those people stay here, start their lives, work, start businesses, buy houses and cars and other stuff that improves the quality of life for everybody. The only way you're going to do that is if we have businesses here that will hire them. So we do need those people. The flag is over. Let it go. Robert E. Lee is quoted as saying the flag should be displayed in a museum. Move on. That's James in Hattiesburg. The flag has been great for our state. Positive view of Mississippi. Should have left the flag alone. Okay. So if that would have... I'm just asking this seriously. This is on the C Spire text line, 662. If that would have caused the state to lose this massive multi-$10 billion investment, you would have been okay with that? A serious question.
They would have never noticed it.
Yeah. That's why at some point we got to get serious about moving forward, improving, increasing, right? When do we do that? Instead of living in the past. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
During tax season.
Check it out. Let's do this. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Just as I thought it was going all right, I found out I'm wrong when I thought it was right. It's always the same, it's just a shame, that's all. I could say day and you'd say night. Tell me it's black when I know that it's white. Always the same, it's just a shame.
Welcome back, everyone. We're still waiting for Senator Jeremy England. Hope to have him on here any minute. On the C Spire text line, they aren't giving any tax breaks, just manipulating numbers to make simple people think they care. In no way does all that tax number manipulation help Mississippians. Well, it's definitely going to result in less revenue coming in. So if it doesn't help, who's getting the benefit of that less revenue being paid? Because that's what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. I guess folks don't get it. I can tell you this. If you look at your tax rate in 2024, and I have got this detailed in the article, 2024 to a 3% rate, that is a significant decrease, 36% decrease right now is in place. If you look at between, again, 24 and 27, which under the House plan, which would have taken it to 3%. So the 5% rate, which we had before, down to 3, of course, represents a 40% decrease. But just what's in place right now is going to represent a roughly 36% increase. So I don't know how that can't result in lower taxes. I will ask this. Did anybody notice that the state income tax withheld from their paycheck, assuming their pay is the same, did you see that decrease when we flipped the calendar to 2025? Should have gone down. We went from 4.7 to 4.4. It's a small amount. It's, 7% or so. But you should have seen that. Should have seen a slight increase or in your net pay, a decrease in your state income taxes as a result of the decrease in the state income tax rate from 4.7 to 4.4, next year down to 4.
Sounds like the texter might have been telling on themselves that they're the simple one that doesn't want to do math.
I see. Well, you certainly could be right, but at this point, we're headed to a lower tax rate just by 20% decrease in the top 5% bracket just by virtue of the bill that's passed in 2022, going from 5 to 4. That's 20%. But if you look at the difference between 24 and, I believe I did that math right, 24 and 26, where you go from 4.7 to down to 4, that is significant. So, yeah, that's 16% decrease. But if you took it further down to 3%, it represents a 36% decrease from 24. That's a lot. Well, we'll see what happens.
Too much math for the texture, though.
I'm sorry.
You're just manipulating numbers.
I see. Okay. Well, I'm funny like that. I happen to trust math. It works pretty good.
I have a deep-seated disdain for people that obfuscate their argument with, well, you're just manipulating numbers. You're just blah, 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 blah. No.
Yeah.
You just don't want to sit down and do the math to actually back up your argument, so you just go ahead and make the argument and then accuse somebody of manipulating.
Yeah, it's just not true, of course, as you well know. But
it tends to happen when the talk of taxes comes up.
Okay. Yeah. But because it's math. I'm not sure how else to discuss it without digging into the math. And I feel bad that people out there think, oh, they don't care, they're just manipulating. You know, regardless of what you think about the House plan and the Senate plan, I can personally attest that a great deal of effort and thought and planning went into both plans. I mean, late nights, both sides. You may have disagreements with specifics of either plan, both plans, one plan, not the other. But to suggest that the people I know for a fact were working diligently, by the way, for months, not just in the last couple of weeks since they've been in session.
I'll put a sharper point on it for you.
Okay. If
you're being so selfish as to only worry about yourself in this entire ordeal, then just be bold enough to say it. Don't try to put the blame on, this isn't helping other Mississippians. You're not worried about other Mississippians. You're worried about yourself.
Yeah, I hear you. And it's a shame. If you're a fan of college baseball, you know what? I'm not going to read that. I'm done with reading texts about flags. I can just tell you that right now. You can send them in all day because I think it's time to move forward. It's time to move forward, man.
Time to move forward.
What's that?
Beyond time to move forward.
Beyond time to move forward. I mean, nothing's going to change. We could talk about it all day long, and maybe I shouldn't have even read some of your text. I was just trying to give you a voice. I know there are people out there, how they feel on both sides of this argument. It's done. It's over. Let's move forward. Maybe I'm the weird one, Rhino. I'm worried about taxes. I'm worried about the disposable income of Mississippians. I'm worried about policy that help us attract more businesses and more investment into our state to create jobs and retain our fantastic, talented young people. I want better roads and bridges and better schools, better infrastructure, more healthy Mississippians, more access to health care, more free market principles implemented. That's what I want. And none of that's going to occur by focusing on the past. That's just simple as that. Let's move forward. That's what we're doing here. No doubt about it. Keep sending stuff in, guys. I see more text rolling in. That's fine. We're not going to talk about it. You can be mad at me all day. I don't care. Because I'm focused on the future. I encourage you to be so as well, to do so as well. Speaking of taxes, do you think the NIL money the athletes receive should be taxable, or is it taxable? I'm pretty sure it's taxable. Yeah, it's taxable.
Yeah, it's income.
It's not exempt from income tax. I'm worried about my family first, says Andy. I admit it. That's why I want universal school choice and lower taxes. Well, that's good to hear. I do too, Andy. And
that's the beauty of the Republican Party's platform and the conservative governance mindset. It works whether you believe in it or not.
Yeah, that's right. It's totally true.
And that's the problem with the Democrat liberal mindset, is it only works if you're in the in crowd.
Completely agree. Oh, Donna Perkins says, can we talk about your golf trip to a beautiful location? Love you and Julie. Thank you, Donna. I never really gave you a recap. Gosh, I understand why people are willing to put up with so much to live in California. Weather's pretty good out there. Living in Palm Springs would be something that I would consider were it not for the outrageous high taxes. And you could say that you're kind of awash in liberalism, but I got to tell you, in Palm Springs, it's not like that. It's a conservative part of the state. There are a bunch of people there. But I like sunshine and shorts. That's just me. And the weather was fantastic. I was with a fabulous group of great Mississippians. We were spread across 3 houses, VRBO houses. Really, what a neat house we were staying in, with an unbelievable pool and hot tub right there on the Nicholas course. And, of course, we played at Palm Springs. And it was just an enormously successful and fun trip. Appreciate that. My Senator Collins update for you. She's being challenged by McConnell for most unstable GOP senator. So tell me about universal school choice is good for everybody, says Dave. When let's use Columbia, Mississippi, for example. The Columbia City schools are very good schools, but many people still decide to send their children to Columbia Academy. So you're going to take money away from high-performing schools and expect them to keep the same standards. How does that work? Well, I would say, Dave, the first thing is this assertion you've made that there's a direct correlation between money allocated per student and the quality of an education. We ranked, and the president's been pointing this out, we ranked like 40th in the world now in public education in terms of outcomes and achievement. Yet we spend more, I believe, than any other country in the world. But I think, Dave, what you're missing is how school choice works. To those who would apply for and receive an education savings account that would allow them to take their money, the state amount of money, $6,900 a year that's appropriated on their behalf for that public school education from the Columbia School District, the public school in this case, and enroll in the local Columbia Academy private school. The private school, keep in mind, still would administer their own admissions process, would not have to allow them in. The school would be sans one student and would therefore lose that amount of money. But what if that family student moved, Dave, to a new district? They're not going to get their student money for that. I'll talk about this a little bit more on the other side of the break. It's a good question.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. So I just wanted to follow up before we start talking to Senator Jeremy England this day from Monticello, who I believe used to be a mayor, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that right, Rhino? Didn't he tell us that one time? Let us know about that, Dave, that is just expressing his concerns about school choice. And, I would say that if the public school in your area, as you discussed, Dave, is really performing well, I can't imagine why a student would want to leave, honestly, and take their money and enroll in a private school. That really should be part of the choice matrix, but I don't know that that's the likely outcome of that. Those aren't who we're concerned about. We're concerned about the good parents with the good kids who are trapped in failing schools and are surrounded, unfortunately, by lots of students that don't perform well and unfortunately come from dysfunctional families. We want to give them a way out of the trap. That's really what this is about. So, and then he asked questions about homeschoolers and private school. Those are separate matters, but that's all part of the overall school choice dynamic, and that's going to be debated by our legislature. There's some legislation to do that, certainly coming out of the House. But we've got now with us Senator Jeremy England. He represents District 51, serves as the chair of the Elections Committee, vice chair of Ports and Marine Resources. Good to see you again, Senator. I know you've been busy. You guys gavelled in at 10 o'clock today, right?
Yeah, Gerard. Yeah, thanks for having me, first of all.
Yeah,
yeah we were kicked off today, and it's a busy week. It's floor debate week.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know.
Busy.
You guys got the bills out of the committees, and now you're on the floor talking about them. You ignited quite the firestorm, is one way to put it, with your legislation. I'm going to ask you to describe it for us. This isn't the first time that you've introduced such a measure that would extend early voting in the state, create a system of early voting, in the state of Mississippi, 15 days prior to Election Day. Is that right?
That's right.
Tell us the details here.
Yeah, let me just tell you about the bill. And we passed it overwhelmingly with bipartisan support last year. We did the same yesterday in the Senate after I explained the bill. But what the bill does, it allows for you to show up in person up to 15 days prior to an election, show your valid photo ID to your circuit clerk's office. We're limiting this to your circuit clerk's offices, and they print you a ballot. You mark your ballot, you put it in the machine. If there's a problem with the ballot, it'll tell you. It'll kick it right back out to you. You fix your ballot, and then it goes into the counting machine. And what I really like about this system, Gerard, is on the night of the election day, when the polls close at 7 p.m., the machines are tabulated, and you know those votes immediately. So we don't have to wait days and days and days until we find out the results. In our current system, which is in-person absentee voting, you have to have an excuse. That lasts for 45 days. You have to sign an affidavit that says that basically you swear an oath that you meet one of these excuses, and then you put your ballot into an envelope. If there's any stray markings on your ballot or something, it could get tossed. You just don't know. It's just not as secure of a system of voting as this bill that I have passed now for the second time in the Senate.
Okay. So this doesn't really change the current absentee voting process, or does it?
It does. So it gets rid of the 45-day in-person absentee process.
Okay.
So instead of having 45 days to go in and sign that affidavit with an excuse, we're just giving folks 15 days of no excuse voting to go in. Mm-hmm.
All right. But with respect to those, say, our members of our armed forces who are deployed overseas that go through a mail-in process, which requires requesting that, right?
That's correct.
From your circuit clerk.
Yes.
That you have to send in a request, or I think you can request online. They send you a ballot. Mm-hmm. You have to complete the paperwork in accordance with the instructions. You send it in, and then I believe they open that up on Election Day.
That's
that right?
Yeah, so the mail-in absentee does not change. Still have your 45 days.
Gotcha.
Always watching out for our military folks. And our folks that work out of the county, or out of will be out of their county working or whatnot after that. So not changing in person, absentee by mail.
Yeah. Understand. So we wouldn't need the in-person absentee process because we would have 15 days leading up to the election, right?
That's right. That's right. And it should be a quicker process. You're not having to swear that oath. You're not having to sign the affidavit and have it notarized and have a deputy clerk show you how to put your ballot in the envelope correctly and sign across the flap. All of that is time consuming. This should be just like you do on Election Day. You walk in, show your ID. cast your ballot, and you're headed home, and you know your ballot has been counted, and you also know that nobody's going to look at that ballot. That ballot is it is a secret ballot system.
What is the general opinion from the circuit clerks that have to deal with this situation?
Yes, so the circuit clerks, I've talked to many of them, and it's a change. And I'll tell you one concern that they have, some of them have, is with regard to the space that they have for this and the lines that they may see. But like my circuit clerk in Jackson County said, listen, he wasn't with me on the bill last year. He's since gone through this last presidential election. He said, listen, I think the 15-day early voting would be much more efficient, would work much better. And I'm starting to hear that from those circuit clerks that are starting to consider this. And it's such a great time because we just went through a very busy presidential cycle that saw both Republicans and Democrats show up tremendously to vote early. And in Mississippi, of course, they had to meet an excuse. But in 47 other states, people were voting early under the laws of their states. And we saw how the results turned out.
Did not the president also promote getting out and early voting? I mean, that may be just because we have so many states that allow it. He did. Kellyanne Conway's campaign manager, for all intents and purposes. Laura Trump with the RC, yeah. That's
right. Yeah, he did. He supported it. He promoted it all across the board. Get out and vote. Bank your vote, I believe, is what they were saying. Get it done as quick as possible. And that was causing some confusion here in Mississippi because the national news coverage was what it was. It was so heavily covered that presidential election and how many people were showing up to early vote. We had people in Mississippi going to their circuit clerk's offices and saying, hey, I'm here to early vote, and then finding out, we don't do that. And I think look, if 47 other states are doing it, Gerard, we're ready. We can do this, and it's not going to – in any of these states where it has been implemented, it hasn't changed the state from red to blue or vice versa. That just doesn't happen. It just allows people the convenience to cast their vote, and that's very important to be able to do.
Yeah. So the governor doesn't support this. He's made that quite clear, and honestly, you and he have traded barbs out there on social media is one way to put it. He believes that this would perhaps lead to more voter fraud.
Yeah, and look, that has not proven to be the case. Again, 47 other states do this, Gerard, and look, the name calling or any of that doesn't really matter. Governor Reeves is a friend of mine. Of course, maybe we disagree on this, and I do disagree with him on this, But 47 other states do it. We have great, for the most part, great circuit clerks. I met with the elections commissioners 2 weeks ago, or maybe last week. My weeks run together. They're a great group of folks, very knowledgeable. Secretary of State Michael Watson and his staff is very knowledgeable and can help get this stuff out. And our current lieutenant governor was Secretary of State for 12 years. So he's very in tune with these elections issues. So we know what we're doing. We've got a very limited way to open this up to Mississippians, hardworking Mississippians to work. And I just wish that I don't think that it's accurate to say that this is a Democrat issue. I just don't think that's accurate. We're seeing it across the board in these other states where Republicans are moving towards this. Friends of mine that move into the state, which we want people moving to Mississippi and taking these jobs that Governor Tate Reeves is doing so good to create here in Mississippi. They come here and they say, "Oh my gosh, I can't early vote here. I could do that in my last state. It was great. It was very convenient. I could get to my location and cast my ballot, and I wish I could do that here." So we're starting to hear that. And I think it's time for us to take a serious look at it, and just casting it off as a Democrat issue just isn't helpful.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. I believe he described you as the MVP of the Democrat Party.
Right. Oh, and look, by the way, we had the Jackson State football team in today, and they had this big trophy, and I thought, oh my gosh, is that my MVP trophy? That was congrats to the Jackson State Tigers. That was great to have them there this morning. But again, the name call, it's not helpful, and I'm not going to go down that road. I've got other bills I've got to present. I just don't have time for it, but it's not helpful. And I'll tell you this, because I was asked about the Republican Party. How does this fare on the Republican Party? And I just want to mention that Mike Hurst, our current chairman, and Rance Bilbo, executive director there, and that whole team is doing such a fantastic job as a state Republican Party.
Yeah,
and so I don't want this to to go into that. They're trying really hard to start looking into things like minority outreach and trying to expand our voters by bringing the Republican message and what it is that our ideals and our foundation as a party relies on. And they do a great job at that. So I don't want any of this back and forth to take away from that.
We got a break right here, but we got another segment left in the show. If you can hang around, we'll keep talking. Yeah, we got some other issues we can plow through real quick.
Yeah, good deal.
We got Senator Jeremy England in the Element Wealth studio.
In your wildest dream, in your wildest dream, in your wildest dream.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert. Come on, let's get on with the show! On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down. You can stand me up at the gate.
We're back with you. It's the great Tom Petty. We got Senator Jeremy England in the Element Wealth studio. We were just talking about this voting bill. So, headed down to the House, you have any idea what's going to happen there?
Yes. Well, so I have to table a motion to reconsider today. But once it goes down to the House, Representative Noah Sanford, my counterpart, elections chairman on the House, had a hearing this past summer. He invited the Senate. We attended. Had a lot of good conversations on it, and he told me we're ready to move on a bill this year. So I don't know what their different ideas are, but we'll get to that point where we talk, and he and I work very well together.
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful that they look, I'd love for them to take up my plan. We've got a lot of work into it, but we'll talk. That's just how the process works.
From Covington County area.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, so the governor, not a fan. Sounds like you may have veto-proof situation in the Senate on this, though, right?
Well, the numbers we had yesterday we would have a veto-proof.
Okay.
But ideally, I'd love for the governor to sign it, let it become law.
Okay.
Let's move on. But we'll see.
All right.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Tax plans. We've been talking about that this morning. The Senate introduced its proposal this morning.
That's
the
right.
Lieutenant Governor, I think, laid that out in a press conference. Senator Josh Harkins, I know, has been working unbelievably hard on this matter, and he's a friend. He's a friend of yours. He's a friend of mine. I just want to pass on to the folks. He anguishes over this stuff, man. He truly does.
Right. He's there all the time, working very hard.
I'm telling you, I've been there with him when it's dark up there, and there ain't nobody in the building but the security.
Right.
So, again, you may not like this plan, but it's not without thought and consideration. Now, that being said, significant difference between the Senate and the House plan, I would say, first and foremost, is the House's plan prioritizes full elimination of the income tax. You know that, phasing that out over 10 years. The Senate's plan stops short of that, taking it down to 2.99%
over 4 years. Yes.
Right, in 2030, essentially, starting in 26, and then phasing it down from that. So, actually, 27, 8, 9, 30, I think is the way it works, if I'm not mistaken. I hadn't seen the details. But nonetheless, that's the major distinction between the two plans. The Senate plan does not increase the sales tax, general sales tax. Mm-hmm. It does decrease the sales tax on groceries.
It does, yes.
And then it adds some cents, I think 9, if I'm not mistaken, over 3 years to the excise tax on fuel.
That's right. Right.
Yeah.
So what we know is the gas tax. And look, that was the tough sell for me. Just being
that's
where I'm from.
That's a 50% increase.
Well, but we're still going to be below the Southeast average.
Correct.
With this, we're still going to be one of the lowest on that. We're dropping our tax on groceries to be one of the lowest. we will certainly still be one of the lowest on income tax when we get there. And I'll also say this, just because our current plan that we've got that decreases the income tax over 4 years doesn't go all the way to zero, doesn't mean we're looking to get there.
Right.
In the Senate, we just choose to take things more incremental and see how things work. I think it's a good business decision. I think it's fiscally responsible. And like I said, Senator Josh Harkins knows that. He looks at that in a very smart way. He looked at many, many plans. And let me say this, too. I was very happy to see the House release such a detailed plan to us to work off of and see these different ideas. It shows that both chambers have put a lot of thought and a lot of work into cutting taxes for Mississippians, and that should be something that we walk away from, at least knowing that we're Republican supermajority, and we're here. We're going to work on cutting your taxes.
Well, I think the good news is the revenues continue to outstrip spending. You guys don't appropriate everything you estimate to take in, and that's put us in a position to take some action to give the taxpayer some relief.
That's right. And the amount of money we've paid off in debt the last several years, not having bond bills and just paying towards our debt, saves us so much money on debt service. We're not having to pay that interest rate on top of such a large amount anymore. We're really in great fiscal condition here in the state right now. And that's Governor Tate Reeves' leadership, Lieutenant Governor, and the Speaker's leadership. We've done very good across the board with making sure we're making smart fiscal decisions.
To those who would say we could get this done in one fell swoop if those wily legislators would just cut spending, what would you say to that?
Well, so just like on these tax plans where you pull one string, another one goes another way, look, we've got to make sure that we're performing our core functions of government. Now, if we get outside of that, that's something we can always look at. But safety, infrastructure, now health care, a little bit, education, those kind of things we need to make sure that we're funding properly. And they're very important issues. We've got PERS that's $25 billion less than what it needs to be right now. We're working on that. We've got we want to make sure that our police officers, our law enforcement is paid at a competitive level so we don't start seeing them leave the state. Same with our teachers, of course. We've got those things we've got to keep in mind doing, but there certainly is some fat that can be trimmed. I mean, if we're not trimming fat, we're not looking to trim fat, we're not doing our job.
Before we go, a couple of school choice bills headed over from the House. I don't think we have any remaining in the Senate. You going to be in support of those? Going to take a look? Where do you stand right now?
I like it. I think I call it parental choice. I think parents ought to have more of a decision when it comes to their children's education and the opportunities that they need to be afforded. Okay. I like that.
The Lieutenant Governor's not on board with this, but you and him differ on that.
It's always okay for us to have different opinions in that building. I think it leads to better legislation.
Appreciate you coming on, Senator Jeremy England.
Thank you, Gerard.
Folks, we're out of time here today. We're back with you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.